of this world, they are the Bajajs of this world. Part of Tata's organizes production, but the record of the country in organizing production is dismal. And essentially what we have done is we have handed over the organization of production to the Chinese. So this mobile phone, even though we are saying we make this mobile phone in India, that is not a fact. This phone is not made in India. This phone is assembled in India. All the components of this phone are made in China. The network that has produced this phone is made in China, is owned by China. So every time we use a phone, every time we wear a Chinese shirt, a Bangladeshi shirt, every time we wear a pair of Chinese sneakers, we are paying a tax to China. Because some Chinese youngster is earning a salary to make or to produce that product. So the first message I would give in a presidential address would be that India has to focus completely on production. Because if we do not focus on production and we continue to focus only on consumption, we will find that we will run huge deficits, we will increase inequality, and eventually we will run into a serious problem. But the reason China is inside our territory is important. Because people think that wars are fought between armies and their weapons. But the fact of the matter is that wars are fought by industrial systems. The fact of the matter is that China has an industrial system that is far stronger, far bigger than our industrial system. And that is why they have the guts to come inside this country. The reason China is sitting inside this country is because Make in India has failed. The reason China is sitting inside this country is because India is refusing to produce. And I am worried that India is going to give up this revolution to the Chinese once again. Foreign policy would take into account this revolution. When we talk to the United States, we would not send our foreign minister to invite our prime minister to his coronation. We would not send him 3 or 4 times, please invite our prime minister. Because if we had a production system and if we were working on these technologies, the American president would come here and invite the prime minister.
Hello and welcome to Business on the Wire. In a recent comment, Home Minister Amit Shah said every Indian should pledge to use only India-made goods. He said India's 130 crore population is our strength, and if they decide not to buy foreign goods, India's economy will see a jump. Investments in India will only increase if everyone uses made in India products. The subtext was it's time to abandon all things mostly Chinese and only buy local products made by local businessmen. Is that really how it works, and will it lead to a huge recovery in our economy? To answer that question, most of you will first need to destroy the mobile phones and laptops you're watching this show on, because they're probably either manufactured or assembled in China. Actually, this line of boycotting Chinese goods also overlooks the fact that for many major items like oil, defense and money, we look to areas like the Middle East, France for sure for defense and America for money. But let's analyze this dependence on China bit for a minute. Fact 1. Over the last few years, China has indeed become India's largest source of imports. $70 billion worth of products reach Indian markets from that country. However, one crucial point to recognize is that none of this is being dumped on India. Traders are not buying Chinese goods under pressure, but rather out of need. The recent lockdown is in fact a clear example where there was severe disruption faced by several Indian manufacturers in the telecom space, the mobile phone space, pharmaceuticals, the auto sector as well, all of whom depend on inputs from China. At this point, India's production capabilities remain quite limited for many of these items, and ironically, this boycott may actually lead to a sharp increase in the prices of things we buy because the cost of sourcing the parts rises. Here's Santosh Pai of Link Legal India Law Services explaining how realistic the idea of banning Chinese goods into India actually is.
A complete ban on Chinese goods is not a realistic goal at the national level. As a personal choice or even at the company level, it might be achievable in the short term. But what is more realistic is diversification away from China, reducing dependency on Chinese products in the long term. This is definitely an achievable goal. And to make this possible, a number of factors will have to come into play. For example, what is the domestic investment climate in India like? Is it encouraging domestic companies to make the necessary investments to produce the goods which will act as substitutes for what is currently being imported from China? And next one is, what are the alternative sources? Where else in the world can India source these products from? And at what price points? And when we come to price points, it will also depend on the capacity of the end consumers to absorb price hikes. Because today China is a very competitive place for most of the manufacturing that is done in the world. Some of it, like labor intensive products, might be possible from other sources. So these are the factors which will determine how realistic this goal of self-reliance and diversification away from Chinese goods is possible.
Fact 2. While China is India's topmost import source, it is also India's third largest export destination. Outboard shipments are valued at over $16 billion. A clampdown on imports would certainly meet retaliatory action and hit the already collapsed export trade for India. In fact, in March this year, the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal actually held a meeting with industry and export councils to work on the challenges that had sprung up because of COVID. And one of them was that exporters were feeling the pinch of a closed Chinese market. Fact 3. It also seems like one ministry isn't speaking to the other. When the finance minister was asked about Atmanirbhar Bharat being an anti-import move, she vociferously denied it. But the Home Minister is now actively telling people to start buying only local. And importantly, fact 4. Trade and investment are two sides of the transaction coin. Along with the spurt in imports, Chinese investment, money flowing in, has increased dramatically in the last 4 or 5 years. So what could the damage to FDI and FII flows from China be if we begin to put in import restrictions?
Any import restriction on goods from China will have a deep impact on FDI flows into India, not only from China, but also from other countries. This is because any Chinese investor who wants to come and manufacture in India, in the short term will continue to rely on imports from China, because not all components can be manufactured in India right from the beginning. So it's a gradual process of localization. So it will definitely impact FDI flows from China. It will also impact FDI flows from other countries, because today China hosts supply chains in a number of industries. So even if a foreign investor from any other country chooses to relocate its manufacturing facility in India, they will depend on several input products from factories in China. And any import restrictions from China to India will impact such investments as well. For FIIs, the impact is slightly different, because it is mostly an impact on sentiment. Foreign institutional investors are normally large financial institutions which chase market returns. So they basically pick stocks on stock exchanges around the world. So India is just one alternative for them. So they will come in when the market is performing well, and based on how Indian companies and the Indian economy is performing. And if they see that because of import restrictions, there is going to be a deep impact on the Indian economy, and Indian companies or those listed on the Indian stock exchange will not be performing very well, then FII flows will also over a period of time be impacted.
In this video, I've turned to two of India's most eminent economists, ex-Central Bank President Professor Raghuram Rajan and John Hopkins Professor Divesh Kapoor, and summarized their vast bodies of research into key insights about exactly 1. Why China's economy took off after the liberal reforms of the 80s and 90s, while India's did not. Why China's growth path will never work for India, and finally, whether or not India will soon be able to pull off its own growth miracle. And I'm happy to report that in their research I found some really surprising insights about how India's real problem is not that it didn't know what to do, but rather that it failed to properly implement China's strategy due to its own unique political structure in which understaffed local governments often cater to local interests rather than to the public. A structure that means that while there are other growth models for India to follow, the country could not and still can never grow like China.
After watching this video, don't forget to give it thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. Hit the bell icon to get notified whenever we post new content. Your support means a lot and helps our team create more videos like this. Thanks for watching.